Welcome, level uppers, to another live reaction time. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Midori, alongside the classy douchebag, Mike McLaughlin.
Testing. 1, 2. I am here.
I'm glad you're here, Mike. Thank you for joining me.
Anytime.
Are you ready to talk Daredevil? We have no idea how far we're going to go with this. We're on episode 5 right now. We're on episode 5. Maybe we'll do episodes 5 through 9. Maybe split this into thirds or whatnot. We loved episodes 1 through 4. Off to a great start the show. I just said shart, by the way.
Charts.
Off to a great start.
Off to a great start out.
Yeah. But I'm trying to remember, the last episode that we talked about ended with, I think, Fisk breaking the Russian guy's head off, right?
Right. He slams his skull and breaks it off in the car door.
Yeah. Very brutal scene. We get to see a little bit of Wilson Fisk's bad side there, because at the beginning we're kind of seeing his relationship with Vanessa growing. Like, is this guy as bad as we think he is? He's kind of like Matt in that he wants to make the city a better place. But he clearly has a very messed up side to himself as well. Yes. But season 5, season 1, episode 5, that episode begins with Claire and Matt, their relationship. She's waking up at his house. And I mean, at this point, they're still strong, but their relationship kind of starts to fall apart through these next couple episodes.
Yeah, definitely. She's starting to see that this is something that she actually has a fight with him. Saying you're better than this, you can do better than this, you don't need to be the person that you're being. And he essentially says, no, this is who I have to be. This is, not only who I need to be for myself, but what the city needs. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. There's a part of me that likes this, he says. Part of me that likes the violence, which she says she doesn't believe, but you can kind of see it. He actually does. He definitely feels good about himself when he's able to bring these people to justice and punish them in a violent way. He has no problem with it.
And she's still recovering from her massive beatdown that she got in the previous episode. She's a mess. Matt is feeling her body and once again showing off his powers, that he can tell she has a cracked rib just by the sound of her bones rubbing together. All this kind of crazy stuff like that. And she's clearly feeling it.
Right.
She likes it.
Right.
Let's kind of skim through this episode here. I'm trying to remember the vibe. It's been a little while. I'm done this season now. I did finish season 1.
Let me see if I can bring up a description.
And I thought it was a very strong first season 2 show. I think we'll get to that eventually. Okay, what I'm seeing here, I'm watching the episode now, is you're seeing Wilson, that he is not like the top dog in the way that we necessarily thought he was. Like, there's other people involved in this. Gao, the other Asian guy who is the architect, I can't think of his name, but he has to kind of play those sides as well.
Right. He has to kind of appease to them in a way. He's definitely I wouldn't say mastermind, but he's definitely kind of the head of everything. But he also has to, it's almost like a democracy in a way, but more so with he has a final say.
Sure, yeah. At the same time, though, like when you first saw all these people together, were you kind of already assuming Fisk is going to take these guys out? Like, what were you thinking in this moment about Fisk and about the relationship?
At this moment, I can't really tell you. It ended up completely differently than what I was expecting. I did not expect things to go in the way that it did 100%. I kind of expected some of it. I kind of knew the Russian thing was going to happen in the way it was, but I felt like there were a couple really big players in the whole thing that ended up not being players by the time things were done.
Yeah, I agree. Some of these characters didn't last as long as I thought they would. In this episode, we also had the introduction of Miss Cardenas. This old lady who doesn't speak much English, but she's being kind of removed from her tenement, and there's this big lawsuit going on there. And of course, Foggy and Karen become very invested in this woman and taking care of her, even going to her apartment to try and fix it up for her. So once again, we're just kind of seeing that these are the good guys. Like, they're very kind-hearted, nice people that try to take care of the Hell's Kitchen, the people of Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
Was this the episode where it just like exploded? Like, I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, I'm going on it was called World on Fire, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, you're right. It was. But what happens in this episode as well is we see that the officers, the police, are much more corrupt than we might have thought originally, to the point where the one guy that was trying to speak Fisk's name in the episode he's literally shot in the interrogation room, like the moment he says it. So once Matt, he's actually in the precinct at this moment, he's using his hearing to figure this out. He then ambushes the one officer right after that to get him to talk, kind of piece them together that the police are corrupt as well. This entire city is corrupt, really.
Right, 100%. Real quick, I finally found a recap, but one of the things we did skip was we finally found out how he sees, and this caused some contention in the world. Like, people don't like this a lot, but apparently he sees the whole world in flames. Apparently everything between your essence and the sound and the smells, it creates a visual representation in his head, but he sees everything on fire, which people don't like. I just wanted to get that out there.
Sure. Another really big part of this episode is, as we were saying, the brother of the Russian guy got his head torn off. He was presented to the brother in this episode, but they're manipulating him. They're making him think that Daredevil was behind this. They put Daredevil's mask in his clothing. So at that point, at the beginning of the episode, I'm trying to think of his name. Vladimir. Vladimir is all gung-ho. We're going after the devil. But then later on, we find out the full scheme of Wilson Fisk's plan. He sends that black guy over to him to then intentionally let him know that Daredevil and Wilson are working together and all this kind of stuff. And Vladimir just goes ape shit. Get everybody $1 million for Wilson's head, who can tell me where he is. And that's how Wilson decides he's going to get all these Russian guys together all at one time. Getting their guns, all this kind of stuff, and just blow it all to hell.
Right, and it's funny because Matt's actually sneaking over there to kind of see them right at the time where the whole world just blows up. He's about to go to the door, and the building blows up, and you see him get blown away a little bit. And it starts off in a really intense finale to the whole episode.
Yeah, it was intense because at that moment, the Cardenas and Foggy and Karen, they're in that apartment and eating dinner in like a date-like way. Again, we're kind of not sure what to think of this relationship between the two of them. Like, does Foggy like Karen? Does Karen like Foggy? Because at that moment, remember, Karen's like, I want you to fill my face. It's like, I can't read you, Karen. Are you into Matt, or are you into Foggy? Like,
you thought that. I never thought anything about her and Matt. I mean, there was kind of like a little bit at the beginning, like, is this going to be where it sets up? But then, like, I would say by like the third episode, I kind of knew it was just going to be her and Foggy the rest of the series. So this was not too surprising to me, but I was glad to see it happen because it was great. And so as we can kind of get into the next part that happens, kind of the
I mean, they're feeling each other's faces up, and then just bam, like the whole place just starts blowing up, and not just one explosion, just explosion after explosion starts setting off. Like 4 warehouses around Hell's Kitchen just go up in flames. And that's when you piece it together that Wilson just completely orchestrated this big deception to get all the Russians in one place, kill them all at once, even though Vladimir actually did not die in this scene.
No, not yet. We'll get to that very soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, actually, let's skip right to the next episode, because that was, I think, the big part of the next episode is that at the end of that one, you think that the officers have Matt. Like, they've got him, they're pointing the gun at him. The beginning of the next episode starts, and he quickly gets out of that and brings her to, like, a warehouse where he's going to try and get information out of him, the information that he needs. But this was a really cool episode.
It was all right. I'll be honest with you, like, so many of these things kind of mesh together. Because the next part that I remember, and this is something from me, I've seen the whole series all together at the end now, and it's been a few weeks now. The only memorable thing at this point to me is Fisk kind of tracking Daredevil down to a warehouse.
That's what I liked about this episode so much, is it was the first time you actually got to hear the two of them talking to each other on the walkie-talkie, Fisk and Matt, finally,
Right.
Which I thought was a big moment. And we get to another big moment, I don't know which episode it was, when they finally see each other. But this episode alone, just having them talk to each other, I thought was a big moment. And also to realize how smart Wilson is. And if Matt didn't realize it either. Like,
no, you thought he was going to be this typical, and you kind of do too as a viewer. You had no idea that he was this well planned. You didn't know that he was going to be this diabolical with everything. It was just like, he's just going to be a typical, mob leader and everything like that. And this really shows that he's very well thought out. Well, between him and Wesley does do a lot for him in this season, as far as thinking things out and helping him plan stuff as well. So.
There was also, I mean, like Matt is keeping Vladimir alive throughout this episode. Like the guy is ready to die at any moment. Like he's using, he calls up Claire at one point to use she tells him to use a flare to
and cauterize the
to
wound,
seal the wound, cauterize the wound, all this kind of stuff. Brings him back to life at one point by like just slamming on his chest. Like he doesn't want to let this guy die until he gives him the information that he needs. And then throughout that, we're seeing officers kind of come into this place and just getting how corrupt it is, because it's really sad. There's a young officer that Matt first encounters.
Right, and he chained him up upstairs. Yeah, when he says he's downstairs, and immediately you hear this officer go, we have an officer down, casualty, and he says the officer's name. He takes off the walkie-talkie, and the guy's like, wait, what? And they shoot him right in the head.
Yeah, sucks.
And so not only is there all this stuff going on inside, but on the outside, there's officers piling everywhere around, including the two really corrupt detectives. And this is actually really key to this episode, that they're kind of the ones leading the investigation and everything like that. And they're kind of waiting, like, can we go in and kill him yet? But they're told to stand down and wait. So they're just sitting around waiting for something to happen.
I thought this episode was intense just because I was constantly wondering, like, how is he going to get out of this? Daredevil. Matt, I should say at this point. But, there's this grate in the ground that he's trying to lift, but he doesn't have the energy to. And Vladimir's not on his side. But it is the call with Fisk that actually convinces Vladimir to help him in that moment. I don't know if it's to get back at Fisk or if it's because he does see Matt's side a little bit, but he does get up. He helps him at that moment to pull open the crate and get out. But we also get to see the full effect of Wilson's plan at this point, where he actually has snipers on the roof, shoots officers on the ground,
including the detective, the main one, and it was kind of surprising. At first I thought it was like, oh, this guy missed, but then you kind of find out, no, this was his plan. He's framing Matthew Murdock, and not only that, but he's also kind of taking out a pawn in the game, one that he kind of felt let him down, because this is how Matt found out where everything was going on. He got his cell phone. He got this detective's cell phone and everything like that. So that's kind of what led Fisk to do this. But at first, you had no idea at all whatsoever, and it's kind of showing you how ruthless Fisk can be in this sense.
Yeah, because at this point, like, do you think that Wilson actually thinks he's a good person, or do you think that because killing like these officers and stuff like this, doing what he has to do according to him?
Yes.
Do you think he actually thinks that he's a good person?
Yes, I think because he has that mindset of, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of one. So in his mind, he's definitely doing the right thing. So even though there's casualties happening, they're far less than what would happen if the whole city turns to crap. Because no one else's way of fixing the city is better than his.
Sure. The episode does end. Vladimir, in a heroic final stand, helps Matt out one last time. He takes the gun, lets Matt, kind of travel through the sewer, the tunnels, or whatever, and holds his own and off-screen death, firing away at the officers coming in. And that's how this episode ends. So Matt does get away with the help of Vladimir, and now Vladimir is dead. The next one, I think, is my least favorite episode of the entire season.
Really?
Actually. It was the one that focused on the mentor of Matt.
Right, I like this one. This is actually one of my favorite ones. I like this a lot.
I think what bothered me in this episode, and not all of it, but the acting was definitely the most questionable of the entire season, in my opinion. Not just the kid, who, obviously kids don't act the best sometimes, but even, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the guy that plays the mentor, I'm kind of tired of him playing these kind of roles. And I didn't feel like the script was very tight in this episode. Like, I didn't like his lines, the things that he was saying for the most part.
Are you a fan of Kung Fu movies?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Are you a fan of Kung Fu movies?
Am I a fan of Kung Fu movies?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Like Kill Bill and stuff. I'm totally on board with that, yeah.
No, Kill Bill is not a Kung Fu movie.
That's what this reminded me of, like the whole mentorship. That totally reminded me of Kill Bill Volume 2.
But Kill Bill, but more so, I'm talking about like traditional Kung Fu movies. I'm talking about stuff with like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, like the original stuff, like not the American stuff, like the original overseas stuff. The way that everything happened was very Kung Fu-esque.
I agree.
I don't think I have any problem with that at all. The acting is never great in those movies, and it's not about that. It's about the message that they, push out. And so that's why I actually had no problem with this episode. I liked it. I thought it was very interesting because I can oversee the acting and the dialogue, but it was very interesting to see why he is how he is.
I think maybe it was, and this goes to your point a little bit. I guess it being like a kung fu movie is that it really did feel very cliche,
Right.
to the point where like I was like, oh, this is just so like done so many times, a million times. Like I've seen this before, and it's like even the lines, like everything they were saying is like these are like I feel like these are pulled directly from a kung fu movie. Like it just kind of felt a little too trite for my taste, I guess.
That's just the story of Daredevil, and that's something that you got to accept with this situation because it's not too far off. It wasn't like it was just completely uncanon. This is actually not too far off from what really one of the original stories. So I actually had no problem with this. I think this is one of the better episodes of the season just because it fit a lot of the typical Daredevil storyline plots, but it also gave a lot of background that you up until this point you were kind of missing. Like, how the hell does him having all these things make him great at kung fu? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, hey, look, I can smell better now. Bam, I'm gonna punch you in the face quicker than you can even realize. Like that doesn't.
Oh no, I agree. It was definitely a necessary episode. It needed to happen. We needed to find out why Matt is the way he is. Like what brought him to becoming Daredevil or the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. But damn, we find out that it wasn't like his entire life. Their relationship really fell apart very early, actually, on when he was still a kid.
Right, and that's what changed. That's something I didn't like that much is because they kind of made it to where he all of a sudden got all these amazing skills in the course of a year. Get out of here. It didn't make much sense, and that's kind of like things that are a little bit awry in this version of it. They could have definitely changed it a little bit. But I don't know. I actually like the episode a lot, and I think it definitely helps to set up the rest of the series because this is not the last time you see him.
No.
Which is
we did get like a little, I guess, a glimpse maybe at a future villain because in this episode, the first thing they did when he comes back, he comes back and Matt's an adult now, obviously, and they clearly don't have a good relationship. But this guy wants to go on a mission with Matt. And they have this agreement, this promise that he's not going to kill. But when they get there and they find out what the cargo is that they're coming for, it's a little kid. And the guy still tries to kill the little kid, who is a Black Sky. Is that what it is?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember the exact thing of what it is, but it's definitely one of the supernatural elements, and it has a lot to do with Nabu, who is the Japanese architecture guy that's one of Fisk's right-hand mans. This is one of his, I guess, doings. I guess you could say. I don't really know what to call it, but this is part of his plan. And this is actually where you learn that there's more going on than just what Fisk has planned. This is actually there's something more going on with Nabu and the old lady. I can't remember her name either. Off the top of my head, but they definitely have Gao, yeah, right, and they definitely have something else going on, and it kind of comes into play because what ends up happening is Stick goes to shoot this little kid, and Murdoch gets in the way. He hits the arrow out of the way, and it causes a big problem. Stick disappears, and then all of a sudden he shows up in the apartment, and they fight it out.
This is where a very long, brutal fight. Right, like this just kept going.
Right, and I liked it a lot. Don't get me wrong, I love this. But it was just not. It wasn't something that you really expected to happen too much. Up until the very end, where Matt kind of almost puts the old man into his place in a way. They're both kind of hurt equally in a way, but I think Matt had the upper hand at the very end.
Let me ask you real quick. What do you think a Black Sky is? Do you think it's somebody like Matt that has these like high perceptive abilities?
I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Daredevil that has nothing to do with Daredevil anymore, and it's going to transfer over into one of the other shows that's coming out.
Yeah, there is other shows, yeah.
So this is going out realistically, a lot that's going on in Daredevil right now is going to transfer over into Iron Fist. A lot of it. So be anticipating a lot of stuff in that, including stuff that you've seen not even yet, or even stuff that you don't realize is going to interfere with Iron Fist is definitely going to be a big player in that. So this, I don't think you're going to know anything more on it until one of those shows comes out. But after the fight that you see with Murdoch and the Stick, he kind of retreats back somewhere you don't know, and all you see is him kneeling in front of this shirtless guy. You can't see his face; you just see his back, and it's very scarred up, if I remember right.
Let me actually go to the scene on my screen here. See if I can find it. Here it is. I don't know if I'm supposed to take this guy as a villain or not, because I'm not sure if I should take the mentor as a villain, really.
Right, you don't know what's going on, but clearly there's ulterior motives for everybody, not only for how I said Gao and Nabu had their own ulterior motives, but now you see that the Stick kind of went after Murdoch intentionally. And almost in a way, they kind of say, they make it seem like whoever this person was sent him for Murdoch, because he's going to be a player in a much bigger picture than they have, that he already knows. They say something along the lines of, "Will he be ready?" And he says, "I'm not sure." So you're like, ready for what? You really have no idea what's coming. So that's going to be something to anticipate eagerly.
Before we move on to episode 9, which I think will probably, or 8, whatever it is probably be the last episode for me as well. Yeah. I've got to get wrapping this up. We do have some new people in the room. Welcome, Wasted Unicorn. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Matthias FFK, for the Twitch follow that just happened. Really appreciate that, man. Keep those follows coming, guys. Hit the heart button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. If you don't know, I know the name still says Game of Thrones, but right now we're talking about Daredevil. Episodes 5 through 9 is what we're on right now, and I think this will be the last one we talk about. After that, we get to see, you talk about this in our first reaction time, about Wilson Fisk and his obsession with the rabbit in the White Storm or whatever, because this one opens with him looking at the wall.
Right. He actually has a nightmare. It seems, of sorts, and it kind of goes through a day in the life of Wilson Fisk, and it's very interesting because he has a nightmare. He wakes up and he calms himself down by staring at this wall, and you're really not sure what's going on. He goes through, he makes breakfast, and he does all that, and goes through the rest of his day. And he's a very, I guess, organized, not organized, but he goes through the same motions. It seems like he's very thought out. He has a plan of every day.
Well, he doesn't have much of a life outside of this. Vanessa's the first time it seems that he's kind of let a woman into his life. So this is his normal routine. This is what he does every day. Right.
And so not only that, but you kind of have to pick apart this episode very closely because, or at least the beginning, because you see him, he does the same stuff, but he goes and picks out one suit. And he picks out one set of cuffs. And this isn't the first time you've seen these. Vanessa actually asked where you got them. And he said they were given to me. And you don't really know why. But the whole point of this episode, and I don't think there's very much else that happens besides, a lot of stuff with him and Vanessa again. You see that relationship start to rekindle in a way and enhance. But more so, you kind of see the backstory to Fisk and what really made him the way it was. And this was a very important episode, and it was probably one of the most boring, let's be honest, out of all of them. And I say boring in a way meaning there wasn't a lot of action. This was a boring in a way that
I was gonna say I didn't think it was a boring episode. I really enjoyed this episode, and I do like when you get these origin stories of the villain. And once again, this was kind of an episode trying to build sympathy, I think, a little bit for Wilson, to try and explain what he went through as a child. He had an abusive father, a drunk abusive father, who wanted him to be tough, really. He just wanted him to be a young man. And he was into politics as well, the father.
Well, kind of. He was trying to get into politics, and that's kind of what hurts in the end. You see him as a boy. This kid was picking on him. Saying his father's never going to do anything good, and he's never going to win the election, and this and that. And he lost the election because of whatever reason. So he asked if he did anything about it. And he said no, and the father takes him down to find the boy. And they confront each other, and this it's this 40-something-year-old man confronting this 16-year-old kid, just being a punk and saying stuff, and it ends up turning into a fight where the father kind of starts beating on the kid and tells Wilson to start beating on him as well. Hit him harder, hit him harder, hit him harder. Now you also seen a lot of his mother in this episode, and she's kind of trying to defend him. She's a very innocent person. You can tell that she's the one. She has like battered wife syndrome. She doesn't want to leave.
Oh yeah, definitely. She doesn't want to talk back to him.
No, so you see, she's very nurturing and caring about Wilson. When the father, says some things to him that she doesn't like, she combats it away. She even, tries to comfort him by giving him food, and the father comes in saying, "You're going to make him fatter than he already is," putting him down. So this is kind of like, I kind of skipped ahead, but there's a lot that goes on that's. You can kind of see it's been told before. It's something new.
He was pushed to this, though. That's what you're seeing with Wilson, is that he was pushed this moment. Farsender says that he's like, I love the backstory parts. Madden Fisk backstory has some really good points, and the best character development, really. And that's what this was. This was a character development episode.
This wasn't boring to me. There's a lot of people that don't like it because they say it was slow. I like stuff like this as well. I am not against it.
Yeah.
It was just there's not a lot of action in it, besides, unfortunately, this one scene. This is where it kind of culminates. He ends up beating the boy down, and it definitely weighs on him in the end. On Wilson, he doesn't like it, and they end up going back, and the mother and the father get in a fight about it, and Wilson's kind of in the corner, And I don't know if there was anything else that happened that you want to cover before we get into this, because this is really kind of a defining moment for Fisk in a
Yeah,
way.
before we get into that, let's talk about a few other things, because we're getting close to wrapping up this reaction time. I just want to talk about some other big kind of points throughout
Right.
these episodes. First of all, you're seeing some more of Karen. Let's not forget that she is falling down a path here, along with Ben Yorick, really just not able to let go of this investigation, and for good reason. I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. She's putting herself in danger, is what it is. But she is able to get Ben on her
Definitely.
side. They're going through this, trying to look into Wilson's past, and this right here, what we're talking about, does come back in later episodes as a big deal. This relationship with the mom and what they eventually do. Another thing that we see in this episode a little bit is that the one black officer that was friends with the officer that was shot.
Right.
He is forced by Wilson. Through a money payout, and this is not something the black guy wants to do. You can tell that they actually were very close friends. He's forced to poison his best friend and partner in the
In the
hospital.
hospital from getting shot in the previous
Yeah.
episode. Right.
And of course, Matt is able to get there, like right after it's about to
Right.
happen, and able to get some information out of this detective. I don't know what to call him. He's just a police officer, a corrupt police officer.
No, he's a detective. They were both detectives.
Yeah. But once again, just kind of reinforcing just how deep this city is into corruption and how hard it's going to be to cleanse it of that.
Right.
But
Easily.
then, yeah, let's get into really that big defining moment in the episode, where we once again go back to Wilson as a child, and his dad is telling him to sit in a chair and stare at the wall.
Yes, he's saying that he's telling him to stare at the wall, and you kind of see the wall that resembles now the painting that Wilson is comforted. And one of the things we did skip over is the development of him and Vanessa a lot in this episode, to where she kind of gets him out of his comfort zone. He always picks the same suit. She made him pick a different one that she liked. He always picks the same cuffs. She picked a different one that that she liked. She's getting him out of the comfort zone and out of his norm. So that actually,
and more so than just that, it's not just an appearance thing. We're going to get to that in a moment, but it's not just appearance. Like there's more to it than that. Right after we see the scene where his father is just berating the wife, his mother, he's being forced to sit in the corner, staring at the wall. And it just he can't handle it anymore. It's just that all this stuff has been building up for so long. He sees the hammer, and then he picks it up and starts antagonizing the father.
Right, and he said, "What are you going to do? Hit me?" And he does. He goes and lunges at him, and then he starts yelling at him, "Hit him harder! Hit him harder! What are you, a pansy or something like that?" Basically a lot of the stuff that the father, I guess, was yelling at him when he wasn't, hitting the other kid, from earlier in the episode. And this kind of shows his sadisticness, and you're like, "Wow, this is intense." And the mother's in the background, like, "Oh my God, no, Wilson, what are you doing?" And then you see this twist, something that you didn't know really where it was going to go, but all of a sudden out of nowhere, the mother kind of turns around and is like, "Okay," and she turns. It's almost like they had early access to CSI, back in the freaking 60s or something like that. Because she's like, "All right, well, cover your blood trail and make sure you clean this up, and let's dump him in the river because they're never going to look there," and all this stuff. So she ends up helping him, cover it all up.
Yeah.
And it was convenient because he was in debt to some mobsters, so that's why no one ever looked at the mother. Another cliche, parts of the story, but yeah, it was definitely an interesting twist, but that's where
it was brutal too, because I don't know if you said it, maybe I missed it, but they chopped up this freaking body. They had to chop it up into pieces and then gradually bring it out. Like they kept it in the house, so it must have stunk. Like this thing over the course of days or a week or whatnot, they gradually took it out in pieces.
Right, and it was intense. But this is actually also where you see the cuffs, and this is why it was a big thing to him, because it was his father's cuffs. So it was kind of a reminder to him of why he's doing everything. Why he is the way he is. So you start. And
it's something that he shares with Vanessa. I don't know if it's in this episode, but he trusts Vanessa enough to share this dark past with her. And through that scene, I think that happens in this episode at the very end, she's kind of remolding him here, because he's going to get ahead of Karen, get ahead of Matt, get ahead of Ben, and go public and put himself out there. As the savior of the city, somebody who's trying to make things better. And Matt watches it on TV, seeing this final moment where he's declaring himself, and it's just like it pisses him off so much that everything that he was planning, trying to put Fisk into the light, trying to use Karen trying to use Ben to tell this story, it all gets torn down in like one moment.
Right. Ben's actually everybody like the whole episode was kind of leading up to like, all right, this is the turning point for Matt and everybody like that. You thought that they were going to finally have the upper hand. You're Ben Urich's actually writing the article exposing Fisk and everything like that. And out of nowhere, the twist comes in, and that's what really a big thing in the episode. We didn't really touch on it much in this reaction, but that was a big part of this episode as well. Like all of a sudden, bam, Wilson just gets 3 steps ahead of you and completely shuts them down.
So the entire beginning of the season, or like the first half or more, it felt like that was happening. Like no matter what they were doing, he's always a step ahead because he's got his fingers in every like cookie jar, like he's everywhere. He's paying off everything. It's hard to compete with that. It's just so corrupt that it's discouraging, not just to the characters on the show, but to us. It's like, oh my God, like how do you get by this?
Right. And it was kind of like, oh man, what are they going to do at this point? Because I looked at it and I had 5 more episodes to go, and I'm like, Jesus, this is like restarting an entire series again in a way. So I really had no idea what they're going to do in 5 episodes left. But it was crazy. But in the next reaction time, we'll definitely go over how that changes, because the rest of the series was completely different than what we've seen so far.
Farsender said that was actually one of his favorite moments in the entire season, was seeing Wilson kind of go public and the frustration, on Matt and everybody's faces when that happens. It was a good little twist moment. I think let me think here. I'm trying to think like how I felt about this middle half. I thought the first like 4 episodes were especially good, like 2 and 4 especially. I enjoyed a lot. And as I was saying, I wasn't a huge fan of the mentor episode. I actually really, really liked this episode with Wilson. And I did actually like the episode with them being caught up in the warehouse. I think we were kind of backwards a little bit, me and you.
Right.
But I think
all 3 of these episodes were actually my favorites, I think, of the whole series, because this is really where things start to amp up for me in many ways. And this is kind of where I even said in the chat, like, oh my God, how can this get any better? So I love this part.
I think that this is not maybe this moment here, but I do think that the last like couple episodes weren't as strong for me. I don't know, like if something kind of went a little off
later on, because we need to wrap us up anyway.
Yeah, but I was just kind of saying, like, I do think this was kind of like where the peak. Like I kind of feel like this was the peak here that we're ending off with. And then it's still good. Don't get me wrong, and we'll get to that. But I think this was probably the peak on the episode. Real quick, thank yous to our 5 or so Twitch hearts tonight. Thank you to Matthias, Tony Atwell, Zagrobu Dobrovanik or something like that, Farsender once again, Anon Legacy, and Nightman, the first follow of the night. Really appreciate those guys. Thank you so much for watching this reaction time on Game of Thrones and also Daredevil. These will go up on YouTube, of course. If you don't know, if you missed any part of this, go to youtube.com/The Level Up Show, level spelled LVL. Subscribe while you're there, please, because we do archive everything, and check out some of the stuff we've done with other shows, including Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, Arrow, Flash, and more to come, of course, in the future. Follow us on Twitch if you haven't already. To the people in the room watching on PS4 and PC, all you got to do is hit that heart button. It's simple as that. And I'll be on tonight also with Level Up Direct at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That is another gaming dedicated talk show. I'll take your Skype calls for like 2 hours straight. It'll be a lot of fun. So join me then. Mike, as always, man, thanks for joining me.
Of course, every week.
Yeah, every week. Until next time, guys, take care. And as always, level up.
Level up.